The Council's demand came in through official channels, a summons from the Galactic High Order, an empire that had never paid us much mind until now. But this wasn't a friendly introduction. This was a demand, pure and simple, from an entity so large that it saw planets as pawns and civilizations as resources to be taxed, exploited, or destroyed. I remember the exact phrasing, burned into my brain as soon as it hit my display screen. The Galactic Council hereby requires a tribute from humanity, a display of loyalty. Cold, dismissive, as if we were nothing but a minor species, barely evolved enough to stand in their presence. They had outlined their demands, and it wasn't just resources. They wanted power, influence, a symbol of our complete submission. But there was a problem they hadn't counted on. We don't submit, not to anyone. The next few days were like nothing I had ever seen before. A call went out across every military base, every strategic hub. Leaders assembled, not to negotiate, not to plan a tribute, but to plan a response. And it was decided in a single meeting, without argument or hesitation. We would send them a tribute, all right? But it wasn't going to be gold or resources. No ambassadors, no gifts. Just raw, unfiltered power. My ship, the Aegis, was selected as part of the fleet. One of our finest battleships, armed to the teeth and designed for pure, unrelenting combat. And I was ready. More than ready. Every single member of the crew felt the same way. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were an answer, a promise wrapped in steel and weaponry. The day we launched, the air was electric. Our ships, hundreds of them, lined up like a wall of determination, humming with the anticipation of an entire species finally given the chance to make a statement. I was stationed on the bridge, commanding officers around me, eyes sharp and focused, watching the last preparations before we tore across the stars. The Galactic Council hadn't even bothered to learn who we were, what we were capable of. They saw a backwater species, a collection of feeble humans, but they were about to get an education. We made the jump into Council-controlled space with enough firepower to flatten the solar system. The ships moved as one, each perfectly in sync, coordinated by a network system that responded almost instinctively. From the bridge, I could feel the hum of the reactors, the charging of particle cannons, and the power radiating through every deck. We'd come up with the perfect counter to their demands, a declaration of our own. The Council had always operated from a position of overwhelming force. They were ancient, with technology that had subjugated entire civilizations before we'd even built fire. But it was that very arrogance, the centuries of unchecked power, that made them so dangerously complacent. They hadn't bothered to keep track of humanity's rise, to see what we'd built in the darkness between stars. The Galactic Council's capital lay at the heart of a protected zone, a fortress world ringed by a fleet, thick with defense arrays, automated drones, and enough artillery to repel any threat they'd ever encountered. This protected zone was their security blanket, and in their minds, they'd made it impenetrable. But that day, they were about to witness a human armada appear in that fortress system, like a storm rolling in from clear skies. I leaned forward in my seat, watching the display as we closed in on their capital. The Council hadn't even issued a response yet. Maybe they thought we'd made a navigation error, that it was some mistake, a glitch in our communications that brought us into their orbit. But they'd soon learn. Every ship in our fleet moved in unison, precise and disciplined. Each captain, each gunner, each engineer had prepared for this mission with one goal in mind, to show them that we were here by choice, fully aware of who they were, and fully capable of bringing them down. Our arrival in the heart of the Council's territory was almost silent. Communication relays buzzed with brief orders, no wasted words. It was surreal, seeing the vast blackness of space lit up by our fleet. Hundreds of warships spread in formation around the Aegis like the constellation of a vengeful god. I watched as the Council's orbital defense grid scanned us, their system just now waking up to the fact that humanity had marched uninvited into their sanctum. Long-range sensors started picking up the first signs of activity on their side. An intercept squadron deployed from a nearby moon. It was small, barely a fraction of our strength. They'd clearly underestimated us. assuming they only needed a light skirmish force to intercept what they probably still thought was a navigation error. I gave the order, a calm command spoken through gritted teeth. Target the lead interceptors. Disable, don't destroy. Our objective was still a show of power, not an all-out war, not yet, anyway. The fleet moved like a single entity, each ship acting on shared intent. Particle beams and ion cannons flared to life, striking with surgical precision. Within seconds, half the interceptors had been knocked off course, their engines disabled, leaving them floating adrift. The others, seeing the precision of our attacks, veered off, retreating back to their command structure with haste. The show had only just begun, and they were already beginning to understand. A transmission came through, routed from the Council's diplomatic wing. It was an automated signal, their equivalent of a standard diplomatic hail. Human fleet, state your intent. You are trespassing in restricted Council space. Unauthorized presence is a violation of interstellar law and will be treated as an act of aggression if not clarified immediately. The words were sterile, almost robotic. They hadn't expected us to get here in one piece. Our navigation capabilities, our technology, our speed, all of it was foreign to them. As they had to face it now, there was a mix of astonishment and fear starting to leak into their rigid protocols. I stood, transmitting back in the calmest voice I could muster. We're here on behalf of the humans. The Galactic Council demanded a tribute. We brought one. For a few moments, there was silence from the other end. But then the Council's signal flickered, patched through to their central diplomat, a creature known for its detachment and apathy. What is the meaning of this, Captain? The voice was dry, an almost insectoid lilt to it. The speaker sounded more annoyed than alarmed, as though they were dealing with a minor inconvenience rather than a fully armed human fleet on their doorstep. Explain your reasoning for this excessive presence. I couldn't suppress a smile as I responded. The meaning. We wanted to show you that your assumptions about humanity are outdated. You wanted a tribute to prove our loyalty. Here we are, showing you exactly who we are. Our fleet represents the finest of humanity's engineering, innovation, and resolve. A cold, heavy pause lingered, stretching between us. I could almost sense the Council diplomat attempting to process the situation, still not grasping the depths of what we brought to their doorstep. We were holding our fire, but we weren't backing down. We asked for a tribute, not an invasion. The voice on the other end was tight with forced calm, a strain betraying the speaker's irritation and confusion. This is our tribute, I replied evenly. A show of what humanity has accomplished. You wanted proof of our loyalty, of our willingness to comply. But we're not here to surrender. We're here to show you that humanity won't be treated as some fledgling colony under your control. The channel went silent again. This time, it stayed that way for longer, as if the Council's representatives had been utterly blindsided by the audacity of our words. They'd expected us to come crawling, intimidated and desperate to appease their demands. Instead, we were staring down the entirety of their defensive fleet, challenging the foundation of their power. Their silence gave way to action. We picked up signs of reinforcements inbound, warships breaking orbit from the Council's Central Command world and assembling in formation, visibly bracing for a confrontation. The display screen in front of me filled with the readouts of their weaponry, power signatures that dwarfed anything we'd ever encountered in battle simulations, but we'd come prepared. Our fleet adjusted positions, moving in a tight, layered formation. On board the Aegis, my officers exchanged glances, their faces resolute. Some looked nervous, sure, but the fear had no place here. There was only anticipation, a fierce determination to see this through. We weren't just facing the Council, we were facing every assumption they had made about humanity's place in the universe. Before long, a face appeared on the display, an individual from the Council that I recognized from intelligence briefings, a figure who sat on the ruling chamber, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They looked as alien as you'd expect. 4 arms, elongated skull, eyes like polished stone. Their voice was low, almost a whisper that cut through the static. Humanity, they began, their tone bordering on contempt. You don't seem to grasp the gravity of your actions. This is not a matter for negotiation or demonstration. Your defiance will be met with decisive action." I leaned forward, meeting their gaze on the screen. "You called us here. You demanded proof of our worth. This is it." The council figure's eyes narrowed, a slight twitch betraying their frustration. "We did not ask for a display of your military might." "No," I replied calmly, "but this is what you're getting. Humanity has no intention of bowing, no intention of playing by rules written by others. You wanted to see us in our full capacity. Now you have." The diplomat's composure fractured, anger flashing in their cold, inhuman gaze. "You have signed your own death warrant, human." I didn't flinch. "I guess we'll see." And that was it. With the diplomatic pleasantries stripped away, the council fleet took its positions. Their energy cannons powered up, the faint glimmer of charged plasma spreading across the hulls of their warships. From the bridge of the Aegis, I watched our crew prepare for the inevitable, the calm before the storm taking hold. I signaled to my tactical officer. "Prepare for full-scale engagement. Divert all shields to the forward arc, and have the rail guns primed." Around us, our fleet followed suit, formations shifting as squadrons maneuvered into optimal range, weapon systems aligning on the enemy positions. Every ship, every cannon, every torpedo tube, it all fell into place like pieces of an unbreakable machine. As the Council's fleet advanced, our systems locked on. We were ready. They fired first. A wave of plasma arced toward us, streaking through space like furious bolts of light. Our forward shields absorbed the brunt of it, energy dispersing in a flash across the reinforced barrier. The ship rocked, but we held steady, immediately countering with a barrage of rail gun fire that tore through their front line, shattering 3 enemy craft with pinpoint precision. And just like that, the battle erupted. On my screen, hundreds of ships twisted and spun, exchanging fire in a dazzling, deadly dance. Explosions blossomed in the void as our torpedoes found their marks, devastating clusters of enemy vessels. The Council's forces were powerful, disciplined, but they were still adjusting to the speed and precision of our attack. We weren't just matching their strength. We were outmaneuvering them, exploiting every weakness with a ruthless efficiency that sent shockwaves through their lines. Our fleet pressed forward, cutting through their defenses like a blade through silk. The Aegis led the charge, its cannons hammering out a relentless stream of fire that broke the enemy's formations, leaving their ships stranded and vulnerable. Around us, the Council's warships buckled and burned, their towering arrogance reduced to smoldering wreckage. Minutes stretched into hours, the battle an unyielding maelstrom of fire and fury. But as the Council's fleet dwindled, a grim satisfaction filled the bridge. This was humanity's answer, our defiance carved in the ruins of their armada. And by the end, only silence remained, the silence of victory. The screen flickered as the Council diplomat reappeared, their face ashen, defeated. "Humanity, we will remember this." I gave a slight nod, my expression unchanging. "Good, because so will we." And with that, our fleet turned, leaving the Council's shattered forces in our wake. They had demanded our tribute, and we had delivered proof, once and for all, that humanity would never be broken. The victory hung in the air like the ozone after a lightning strike, crackling with the unspoken finality of what had just happened. Humanity's fleet had struck down a Council task force in their own heartland and left them to salvage the wreckage. But we weren't in the clear yet. As we pulled back, the tension didn't ease, it thickened. Tactical was picking up activity in nearby sectors, pulses of energy and mobilization signals from Council systems. Our hit had likely sent a ripple of shock throughout their territories, lighting up their comms with warnings of humanity's capabilities. They were scared. And when an entity as powerful as the Council got scared, they didn't hesitate to double down. It didn't take long for us to spot the response. A fleet of ships blinked into existence on our long-range sensors, just on the edge of known space. It was massive, larger than anything we'd seen. This wasn't a skirmish force or a punitive squadron. This was the hammer coming down, an answer to the defiance we'd shown in their heartland. I could see my crew exchanging glances, the thrill of victory giving way to a sobering realization. They were sending everything they had at us. Every last reserve, every war machine we hadn't known they were capable of. It wasn't just about dominance anymore. It was about ensuring that humanity's message, our audacity, was crushed and erased from the records. "Captain," my first officer said, his voice carefully neutral, "it looks like they're coming in waves. First line is just over 3,000 clicks out." I nodded, processing the data in silence. We had pushed them, forced them into a position where they were throwing caution aside. But even with our fleet's efficiency and combat-tested crews, these odds weren't favorable. This new force wasn't just large, it was organized, moving with a lethal precision that hinted at years of collective experience, all focused on one single goal: to neutralize us. "All ships, hold position," I said into the command link. "We'll take them here, use the debris fields to funnel them. This is our territory now." Our fleet reformed in a defensive line, nestled within the wreckage of the recent battle. The field of debris would act as a natural barrier, restricting their movements and forcing them to funnel through narrower paths if they wanted to reach us head-on. It was a calculated risk, a strategy born out of necessity. But as the saying went, desperate times called for the unthinkable. The incoming council ships shifted, adjusting their formation to our position. The first wave was about 100 strong, a mix of fighters, interceptors, and frigates, like locusts swarming towards us. We watched them close in, their silhouettes backlit by the distant glow of a nebula that stretched across this region of space. "Arm all weapons," I ordered, feeling the weight of the moment settle over us. "Prepare for maximum engagement." Our forward batteries lit up, cannon fire streaking across the void, tearing into the vanguard. Explosions rippled through their lines as their ships buckled under the assault. The Council's formation splintered, struggling to advance under the relentless barrage. The defensive line we'd formed was holding, but barely. Each ship in our fleet fired in perfect sequence, their munitions carving arcs through the approaching Council forces. The first wave fell in minutes, broken and scattered. The debris added to the dense field around us, amplifying the chaos. But it was only the beginning. The second wave followed close behind, larger and faster, their warships streaking in from above, attempting to break through our defenses from multiple angles. "Rotate formation to defensive arc 2, I commanded, watching as our ships adjusted in perfect synchronization. We absorbed their fire, our shields pulsing as they took the brunt of their assault. Our counter-fire struck back hard, cutting through the ranks of their ships. Minutes felt like hours as the battle raged on, each wave crashing against us like a relentless tide. Our ship bucked and groaned under the pressure, but our crew held steady, every man and woman fighting as if their lives depended on it, because they did. And through it all, there was no retreat. Not for us. Not now. We couldn't give them the satisfaction of a surrender, couldn't allow them to claim a victory, however small. The message we'd come to deliver was a matter of pride, of proving that humanity wouldn't back down. But even pride had its limits. After the third wave hit, our forces were taking serious damage. Ships that had survived the first battle were now crippled, limping along, their weapon systems depleted. Medical teams were working non-stop, pulling wounded crew members out of smoldering ruins. The Council wasn't letting up, though. Their forces just kept coming, ship after ship, wave after wave, their resolve almost as unyielding as ours. They wanted us erased, and they were willing to pay the cost in bodies and ships to make it happen. The sheer scale of their response told me that they were afraid of what we represented, afraid of humanity's potential if left unchecked. As we dug in, I received a ping from one of the Council ships, a surprise transmission from the flagship of their reinforcement fleet. "Human Fleet Commander," a cold voice filled the comm, laced with an unsettling calmness. "This resistance of yours is impressive, but you're outnumbered, outgunned. There is no logical path forward for you." I held back a bitter laugh as I responded. "You're right, Councilman. We're outnumbered, and we know it. But if you thought we'd just roll over, you're more clueless than I thought." The Councilman didn't skip a beat. You've made your point. But you must see reason. This fight is pointless. I clenched my fists, the reality of the situation hitting home. We'd delivered our message, shown them what humanity was capable of. But now we were fighting to survive, and with every minute, that prospect looked bleaker. "Stand down," the councilman continued, his voice slipping into something almost sympathetic. "Return to your sector. We will overlook this transgression, but only if you surrender now." It was an olive branch, a gesture of mercy disguised as pragmatism. The council was willing to let us live if we crawled back to Earth and stayed there, tails between our legs. But to accept it meant forfeiting everything we'd fought for. I turned to my officers, their faces battered but resolute. They were willing to see this through, no matter the cost. I could see it in their eyes, feel it in the air. We were a fleet of the damned, fighting for something far greater than survival. We were fighting for the right to exist without a leash. "We appreciate your offer," I said into the comms, "but we have an answer of our own." I cut the transmission and turned to my crew. "All ships, initiate final protocol." They knew what that meant. They'd trained for this, the last-ditch plan in case we were ever cornered with no way out. Each ship in the fleet had a core charge, a powerful burst of energy that could unleash a massive EMP wave. It was a desperate move, one that would cripple both our fleet and theirs. But if it meant leveling the playing field, if it meant one final message to the council, they were going to get it. One by one, each captain acknowledged, a silent nod of understanding that they were ready to pay the price. I watched as our fleet pulled together, forming a tight wall of ships bristling with the pent-up energy of our final stand. The council fleet surged forward, sensing the vulnerability, eager to finish us off. "On my mark," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The council ships closed in, their weapons primed, their intentions clear. They thought they had us. They thought they'd crushed humanity's spirit, that we'd buckle and bow. Now, in a flash, the core charges detonated, unleashing a torrent of energy that rippled through the void, blinding the sensors of every ship in the vicinity. An intense shockwave cascaded outward, scrambling systems, disabling ships, leaving the council's war machines dead in the water. We were blind, too, our sensors fried, our ships disabled. But we were still here, still breathing, and we had taken the council's finest down with us. The battle was over. There was no winner, but humanity had made it stand. In the eerie stillness that followed, I could feel the weight of what we'd accomplished. We hadn't just sent a message. We'd torn a hole in their complacency, shown them that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and they'd never look at us the same way again. The council's silence spoke louder than any declaration of surrender or threat could. Their once intimidating fleet drifted, eerily inert, amidst the debris and wreckage from the final charge. The EMP had drained everything. Their ships, left in our no-man's land, had been gutted and rendered as helpless as ours. But we still had one thing left that they didn't: resolve. We weren't some group of conscripts pressed into battle. We were there for a cause, a single collective purpose that was stronger than anything these faceless aliens could comprehend. We had prepared for this possibility since the inception of the fleet, the possibility that we'd be left stranded, cut off from Earth, surrounded by hostile forces without a functional fleet. The crew, too, had come on knowing that any mission of this scale was a one-way ticket. Now, with our fate hanging on what came next, the resolve in their eyes had only sharpened. I brought up a command line on the bridge console, inputting the final sequence that would activate our reserve power stores. Just a flicker, enough to bring life support back online for a few more hours and power a short burst emergency comm back to Earth. The Council's fleet wasn't entirely dead, either. They had some ships, lights blinking, with enough battery power to hold life support for a while longer, but their ability to threaten us, to impose themselves with their usual authority, was shattered. "Captain, comms have re-established a link with Earth," my officer reported, his voice weary but steady. "Patch it through," I said, my voice feeling distant, as if the words were coming from somewhere else. A familiar frequency, crackling and weak, connected us to Earth Command, and the signal would only last a short while. "This is Captain Clark, humanity's first emissary fleet," I said into the comms, aware that the words were broadcasting not just back to Earth, but that any remaining Council vessel in the area could overhear us. This was our moment. The signal stuttered, static breaking up my voice, but I pressed on. We engaged the Council's forces head-on and neutralized the threat. We're transmitting coordinates now for salvage teams and providing initial reports on the extent of the Council's military power. The transmission was brief, and Earth Command's reply, though broken up by interference, was clear. They understood. They knew what this battle meant, and the faint words of our command resonated with the relief of an entire planet behind it. They knew what had been sacrificed, what kind of message we had sent out here, and I knew that the impact would shake the balance of power across the galaxy. Our mission might have ended in standoff, in limbo, but it was enough. It would take years, maybe even decades, for humanity's engineers to develop fleets that could rival what we'd just faced. But now we had a foothold in their space and a reputation no one could erase. Earth's leaders understood now what it would take to survive on a galactic scale, and I knew they would prepare. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The signal faded, leaving only our stranded fleet, our exhausted and battered crew, and the silent Council ships strewn about like empty shells. We were here together, sharing the dead silence of a battlefield in which no one had truly won. Yet the balance of power had fundamentally shifted. That's when the proximity alert lit up on our main console, blinking urgently in the semi-darkness. A new fleet was emerging on the outer edge of our sensor range, another Council force, but something about it was different. It wasn't the massive war armada we'd been contending with. This was a diplomatic fleet, a council of representatives, small in number, but unmistakably official. Their arrival felt like the calm that follows a storm, a measured approach that could only mean one thing. "Incoming transmission, Captain," my officer confirmed. His face was a mixture of disbelief and dread. I accepted the transmission, and the screen flickered on, revealing the image of a Council envoy, her expression unreadable behind the layers of intricate, formal attire. This wasn't a warrior or a commander, this was a negotiator. "Human Captain," she began, her tone cold yet laced with something bordering on respect. "Your defiance and capability have not gone unnoticed. You have effectively demonstrated that your species is a unique anomaly among the galaxy's inhabitants." I leaned forward, feeling the weight of what was coming next. We'd forced their hand, cornered them into a moment where they had to face the truth about humanity. For the first time, they would have to recognize us as equals, or perhaps something even more. "We propose a truce," she continued, pausing for effect. "A temporary cessation of hostilities. Your actions today have redefined the Council's perception of your species. You have proven that coexistence may be preferable to conflict." She was choosing her words carefully, each phrase weighted with calculated neutrality, masking whatever underlying fear or reverence they might feel. The Council had expected an easy, silent domination of a primitive species, but they had not anticipated us, nor the fury and unity that had driven us to the very edge of survival. "We'll consider your offer," I replied, meeting her gaze, unblinking. "But understand this, humanity has no intention of yielding its sovereignty or curtailing its expansion in the name of your control. The galaxy is not yours alone." The envoy paused, digesting my words, the implications settling heavily over both our crews. For all their advanced technology, their intricate social structure, they were faced with a force that had only just begun to test its potential, a force that they had unwittingly pushed to its extremes. They'd lit the fire, but we would be the ones who decided where it would burn. "Our terms will be sent to your command for review," she said finally, her voice low, laden with the understanding that there was no more simple path forward for the Council. "Transmission complete," my comms officer confirmed, and the screen blinked back to darkness. It felt final. Everything we'd set out to accomplish, everything we'd sacrificed and lost in this cold void, had come to this moment. A truce, fragile and delicate, but a testament to the power we'd fought to assert. Around me, my crew sat in silence, absorbing what had just transpired. We had come here as a warning, as the defiant cry of a people who would not be cowed. And though we'd stood on the brink of annihilation, we'd forced them to acknowledge us on our terms. I looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of each man and woman who had put their lives on the line, who had thrown everything into the fight without hesitation. We were more than soldiers now. We were a vanguard, the first wave of a force that would sweep through the stars. Our mission was over, but our future was just beginning. Our ships drifted amidst the remnants of the Council fleet, the silence of victory wrapping around us like the calm after a thunderstorm. Yet, beneath the quiet lay a feeling none of us had quite prepared for. We had demanded respect, but now, with the realization settling in, it became clear that we had also demanded a responsibility. The Council's offer of a truce was an admission, an acknowledgement that humanity had clawed its way into the galactic sphere, and there was no going back. Earth Command would dissect this truce offer, analyze it from every angle. They would question the Council's motives, gauge their fear, and prepare contingencies for when, and it was always when, never if, the truce would break. But for now, at this moment, we held a measure of peace, and it was more than we'd had when we first launched. As I sat in the captain's chair, the bridge eerily quiet, I thought about the lives sacrificed to reach this fragile balance, the immense cost of our defiance. And yet, as grim as the aftermath was, there was a faint current of triumph. The Council had chosen diplomacy over annihilation, and that in itself was more telling than any words they'd spoken. "Captain," my comms officer called, breaking the silence. "Incoming message from Earth Command. It's Priority 1, sir. Encrypted at the highest level." I glanced at him, suddenly alert. "Patch it through." The screen on the console flared to life, and the familiar insignia of Earth Command appeared, followed by the image of Admiral Thorne. His eyes held a steely resolve, a weight that was barely disguised by his expression. "Captain Clark," he began, voice low but clear, "we've received your initial report on the truce offer from the Council. Needless to say, this development has caused a considerable stir back on Earth. You've done your duty admirably, Captain. Humanity owes you and your crew a debt that cannot be repaid." There was a pause, and in that silence I could feel the shift, the gravity of what he was about to say next. "However," he continued, "we cannot afford to accept any truce without contingencies. The Council may be offering peace now, but their power remains vast, and their motives are not yet understood. They could still attempt to undermine us from within, to sow discord or manipulate our progress. We must be vigilant. To that end, Earth Command is authorizing a new directive." A new directive. The phrase had a weight to it, like the beginning of something momentous. "Effective immediately," Thorne went on. "You are to establish a secure position in the galaxy, outside of Earth's immediate range. A forward command, if you will. A place where we can monitor Council activity and safeguard our interests." "Understood, sir," I replied, my mind already racing with the implications. "But with our fleet crippled and resources low, we'll need significant reinforcements." "Reinforcements are en route," he confirmed. "Expect additional fleets within the month, along with supplies and personnel to help establish this new outpost. We are mobilizing on a scale that Earth has never seen before." The line was silent for a moment, and then, as though speaking directly to me alone, Thorne added, "Captain, what you've done out there, it will resonate for generations. You've set a precedent, one that future human forces will carry with them. Whatever comes next, know that you've paved the way." And with that, the screen went dark. I sat there, absorbing the reality of what we'd started. Earth was sending more ships, enough to establish an outpost in alien space. We were no longer just on a defensive footing. We were taking a stance, asserting our place among the stars. Humanity's future was here, in these uncharted regions, and we were the vanguard of that future. Around me, the bridge crew exchanged glances, a mixture of exhaustion and steely determination in their eyes. They, too, felt the significance of what was happening. We had crossed a threshold, and now there was no retreat. "Prepare for reinforcement docking," I ordered, standing. "And get us in position for setting up the forward command. "We're not done here." Our crippled ships limped to a section of empty space where the first stages of our outpost would take form. Salvaging what we could from the Council's disabled vessels, we pieced together a functional base of operations. By the time the reinforcements arrived, we had a skeleton outpost, but it was ours, a station built by human hands, a beacon of defiance against the galaxy's oldest powers. And then, with a quiet sense of finality, the reinforcements arrived. Fleet upon fleet, bristling with energy and life, a testament to Earth's resolve. I watched as they fell into formation, their hulls glinting in the starlight, the unmistakable emblem of Earth Command emblazoned across each vessel. Humanity had come to stake its claim. From the Council, there was silence. No counter-offers, no attempts at intimidation. Their fleet drifted in the background, a silent reminder of our first encounter and the fragile truce they had offered. It was as if they, too, were waiting, watching, calculating their next move in the face of a species that had defied them. With the outpost fully operational, I received a final transmission from Earth Command. It was a single sentence, cryptic but brimming with the confidence of a new era. "Welcome to the galaxy, Captain." In that moment, as I looked out at the vast expanse before us, I knew that humanity had not only survived its first encounter with the Council, we had evolved. We had become something greater than what we had once been, something worthy of the challenges and mysteries that lay ahead. The Council had expected subservience, but we had offered them a choice: accept us as equals or face the full force of our determination. And now, as the first human outpost flickered to life on the edge of their territory, I knew that they understood one undeniable truth: humanity was here to stay.